Welcome back to another episode of Steve Talks About Night Vision Stuff. On today's episode, we're going to talk a bit about the Nocturn Industries Manticore-R. This is more of a first look overview video. We have a pre-production sample, so not everything's going to be finalized, and I'll touch upon what might be different when this is released. We'll likely do a follow-up video on the full production one once we get our hands on it, but for now, we're going to talk about what we have in our hand here. So before we dive into it, we're going to kind of go over the katana and kind of how we ended up here. So for those of you familiar with Nocturn Industries, they've been making the katana for probably the last 3 years. They started by making this as a fully 3D printed system, and then gradually over the last few years, they've added some metal parts. So as an example, they released this aluminum upgrade kit for the IPD stops, as well as some additional hardware, and they also upgraded the dovetail, which was 3D printed, but now is aluminum as well. So I think what they've done is they've taken a lot of the lessons from moving to these aluminum machine parts, and they've kind of moved it in a big way into doing a full aluminum housing. So this is a 7075 T6 aluminum with some 6061 aluminum parts as well, but it's basically, the pods are aluminum, the bridge, battery pod, the whole thing's full metal. So what you're going to get is a huge upgrade in terms of durability, rigidity, etc. So I'm going to go through this, I guess, front to back, and we can talk a little bit about the features themselves. First of all, this system is going to take regular PBS-14 optics, so US mil-spec or lightweight optics, what have you. These infinity stops are metal as well; they'll be included. And then the pod design, as you can see, is highly skeletonized. A lot of cutaways, even comparing between this and the katana. So a lot of weight has been kind of cut down there. This system is actually going to have onboard CR123A power for a total of 24/5 hours on board. There will be, I've been told, a LEMO port option. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be done via the way that they have this bottom bracket. I think what they'll do is drop this and put in another module that has a LEMO port built in. Unfortunately, we just don't have that version, but that's going to be available as well. So you can actually run an offboard LEMO battery pack to the back of your helmet for anywhere from 40 to 80 hours of runtime if you wanted to. Moving on to the front here, you'll notice that there's no knobs, which is going to be a bit of a departure from if you're used to using the DTNBS. You got the PBS-14 style knob, but this is all push button. So you got power for the first time. I think for the first time ever, you now have an IR illuminator on board a Nocturn Industries product. As you can see, there's a plus minus sign, which means that this system has gain control. So if you guys have used the NL914C PBS-14 lightweight battery pack upgrade, same kind of deal, digital manual gain. This device actually natively will accept any 18mm MX10160 format tube. This is your standard 2-pin auto gain tube. Photonis actually makes what we call a 3-pin or 3-pad tube, and the middle pad is actually what's going to control your manual gain. So this housing will have provisions to work with these tubes, so that you don't, there's no need to wire or anything like that. Unfortunately, us being in Canada, we are only familiar with this. I don't think L3 or Elbit has this format tube yet. Maybe they do. We just don't know. If you buy the Photonis 3-pin tubes, this is what they look like. They should just drop right in and give you manual gain. But yeah, if you do drop a 2-pin tube, you don't get manual gain. It's not like just because the housing has manual gain, and this is actually important for those of you who are curious. Just because you have a manual gain housing does not automatically mean that any tube you drop in there is going to get manual gain. You need to make sure you put in a variable gain intensifier to get manual gains. Moving on to the back here, you have your magnetic reed switches to control auto pod on off. So this system is going to be very similar to the one they have on the katana. And then moving towards the back, PBS-14 style optics. The way that this housing is set up right now, with the Nocturn Industries lightweight diopters, this system weighs in around 525 grams. Very, very lightweight for being a full metal system. If you use the Carson or US mil-spec diopters, I think the quoted weight is 560 or 561 grams, which is still quite light, all things considered, for the capability that you actually get out of a system like this. By comparison, the DTNVS, which is a full polymer housing, I think is around 510, 505. The thing is, this thing is plastic, does not have manual gain. So something to keep in mind there if you are considering kind of a high-end, durable, rugged binocular. Comparing between the Manticore and the recently released RNBG-A, the reason why we brought this out as a bit of a comparison is that in terms of feature set and also price point, they're going to be very comparable. But with the Manticore-R, something you have to keep in mind is that it does have the IPD stops. So for those of you who are used to using or are familiar with the Katana, it has this system where it's sort of like a soft IPD stop. So you have this ability to reset your IPD by rotating your pods all the way up. And then when you rotate them down, you have these little crescent moons that basically, do a soft stop for you in terms of where you want the pods to land. And then if you want to set it to be a bit closer, you just kind of continue to roll past. But when you are articulating the system, the pods up and down, they do stop where you need it to. So kind of nice to have toolless adjustment. The Manticore has this, whereas something like the RNVGA does not. The RNVGA also does not have manual gain. And then lastly, one thing to point out quickly is that the IR illuminator on the Manticore is a little bit more recessed. I've been told by Nocturn that they might remove some of these fences or maybe slim them down. So this IR illuminator may or may not be as protected. We'll have to revisit this when we get the final production version. But in comparison to the RNVGA, the IR Illum is quite tall. It's quite out there. So like I said, if you guys are doing airsoft or milsim or anything like that, something to keep in mind with regards to, either of these two systems. So one thing I wanted to quickly point out is that some of you may notice the pod threads are exposed. Normally these would actually be covered up by the eyepiece lock rings, but for the Nocturn Industries diopter assemblies, you actually don't need to run them because they do get locked by these little grub screws that get installed. And that's another way that we're able to drop the weight down a little bit more. And then obviously, if we have the lightweight diopters in stock, which we usually do, you can add these to your build, like I said, to kind of get this system down to the 525 grams that we tested. Very capable, very lightweight, very durable, very rugged system that's just on the horizon right now. Literally checks off all the boxes, right? You got auto pod shutoff, you got manual gain, full metal, lifetime warranty, CR123A battery on board, IR illuminator, on-spec dovetail, IPD stops. Like, I honestly, just from an end user perspective, I can't think of many other features that I would even include on this list. I think it's going to work for a lot of people. Really looking forward to, getting our hands on the final version of this. But that basically wraps it up for today. Hope you guys like this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified when we post new videos, and we'll see you on the next one.